happy Thursday night. Girl, come on. Okay, I think I have my volume on really loud. I can't hear you. No.
Is that working now?
Oh, I can hear you.
Yay! Not sure what is going on.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a static. It's almost like a little phone line. I can't hear you again. Hmm. Nope. Okay, I can hear a noise now.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I think I might have just been blocking maybe my microphone. Is that okay?
Okay, I can say that again.
Is that working now?
It is.
Okay. Is it clear enough?
It is. Okay, good.
Lovely.
I know. We love technology until we don't.
Yeah, I know, right? Definitely.
Alrighty, well, welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Mara, and I have with me romance author Bridget Van Der Eyk. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
So before we start, because this is going to be like a fast but really good hour, congratulations on the release of your second novel, 3,000 Words.
Thank you. It's very exciting.
So that's the second book in the Hollywood Socialite Series. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So the first book
Yay!
was 10 Dates, and the second book, 3,000 Words, which came out this week.
That looks so good. Hold on, I'm going to read those. Okay, so those are illustrated covers for those of you that can't necessarily see. And so tell us about the series. Tell us about how your launch has gone and then how you started writing the series in general.
So it was never supposed to be a series. 10 Dates, the first book was always meant to be a standalone. And
Okay.
then after I finally finished it, it took me from when I started when I was 18, and I finally finished it when I had some time while I was on maternity leave when I was early in my 30s. So once I finally finished it, I think I realized that I just wasn't done. I wasn't done with these particular characters. I wasn't done with the female main character, Libby. And so when I started trying to write a sequel, I didn't even have to force it or anything like that. It just kind of came. And so I was like, this is a good sign that, it's because I hate it when you read like a standalone book or the first book in a series, and then all of a sudden there's more, and you're like, oh, maybe we should have stopped at one, and things like that. So it was nice that I didn't feel like I had to force the second book to come. So yeah, 3,000 Words is the second book that came out this week, and essentially the series is following the same female main character, Libby Evans, who's a Hollywood socialite. And it follows her through navigating relationships, friendships, and her career, all while in the public eye. So if you were a big fan of the early 2000s TV series Gossip Girl, then these are the books for you. So we've got the romance, the scandal, the drama, all that, and of course some unexpected plot twists in there as well.
Okay, so they're inspired by Gossip Girl, but not fan, what am I trying to say? Fan fiction. That's it.
No, yeah. So, like I said, I started these when I was 18, and when I was 18, the Gossip Girl series was big, and so I was trying to write something that I enjoy reading,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, kind of where it all came about.
Okay, so let's start at the titles. They're so unique, and I think that also helps you stand out. So the first one was 10 Dates. The second is 3,000 Words. So why those titles? They're really interesting.
So essentially with 10 Dates, 10 Dates encapsulates the entire romantic storyline for the first book, where Libby finds herself in a situation where she's slept with the wrong guy, she slept with the paparazzo, she's worried that
We've
he's going...
we've never done that before. We've never.
No, that's right.
Just
um,
saying.
that's right. So essentially, she's worried that he's going to leak it to the press, and obviously, being in the public eye and being as famous as she is, that's a really big deal. She wants to keep her nice, sparkly reputation. So essentially, he offers her a way out, which is to go on 10 dates with him, and won't go into any more detail about that because I don't want to spoil anything.
No
But
spoiler.
that's how the romantic storyline kind of starts. In terms of 3,000 Words, though, again, we're following Libby as she's taking the next step in her life, and like anybody, she's not perfect, but unfortunately her imperfections and her mistakes play out in the public eye again, and so she finds that this time her way out is 3,000 words. So that's probably the best way I can explain it without spoiling too much.
I love it. It's really ingenious and it's very catchy.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know, something a little bit interesting. And I've been seeing heaps of those on Instagram, those A to Z challenges. And so I'm always trying to chuck in if you're looking for titles with numbers in them, my books fit into both of those. So yeah, because there's not a lot of books out there with numbers in the title. So I think that kind of makes the book stand out a little bit.
I think so. And those covers are great. Illustrated covers are so popular right now.
I love illustrated covers. That's where my mind gravitates to when I'm looking for a new book. So that's why I went with those for mine.
They're great. Did you design them yourself or do you have a designer?
I had an illustrator, so I designed the covers myself, but definitely the artworks are from an illustrator. So she goes by Maggie's Art, and she's absolutely amazing. But yeah, I'm in no way, shape, or form an artist, so definitely needed someone to help me out with those. But yeah, I love them. They're so cute.
Yeah, I know. She's really good because you do see some illustrated that just don't look as professional, but yours are very professional looking. You can tell.
Yeah, they're really cute and I love them. I love the way it came out.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of your author journey from 18 to what did you say, 30? That's quite the journey to the first book.
So yeah, I've been writing stories, and I feel like every author has the same kind of origin story where, you know, you've been writing stories forever since you were little and stuff like that, but I just never had the time, like going between university into full-time job and stuff like that. I just never had the time to sit down and actually dedicate the time to writing a novel, because it's not something that happens overnight. It requires a lot of hours. So yeah, like I said, I was on maternity leave with my daughter a few years ago. She slept really well during the day. I have never been much of a napper, so I was like, I've got all this time. I'm gonna reopen this Word document that I haven't opened in nearly a decade, and let's get this story finished. Cross it off the bucket list.
Okay, so how much of the original story, though, did you keep? Because I'm sure when you wrote it at 18, I mean, our life experiences are so radically different. And then in that time, you're married, you have this newborn, beautiful baby who sleeps well, which I think there's a lot of mothers on here who don't like you for saying that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So you're bragging about that. But so how different was the story from 18 to when you finally published it?
Well, it was funny because I only had 5 chapters done. So essentially that was setting up the premise for the story. But if I had had more than that, I think it would have definitely changed. The main male character, so the love interest, Wentworth Turner, is probably the part of the story that changed so radically from the first draft when I was 18 to when I actually published it, because my tastes in guys changed over the decade. So he started, even like appearance-wise, he completely changed. I think he started as a really stocky blonde character, and then he ended up being really tall and brunette with like wavy hair, like Harry Styles vibes and things like that. So he was probably the only thing that really, really drastically changed between when I started it to when I finished.
Okay, because I was going to say our tastes do change, and sometimes I hate to say this, when you date like a bulky blonde and it goes bad, you may like, okay, we're not doing a bulky blonde, we're going to do a redo.
Exactly, yeah. So I think yeah, I think appearance wise, he ended up being more like my husband, which he's pleased about. So
Hey, he's a keeper.
that's right.
Okay, so you pick it up, you have 5 chapters written, and probably, need, obviously, you said a little bit of reworking. But how long did it take you from when you first opened that doc to when you finally felt like this is good? I can send this off, and then, continue the rest of the process, editing, proofreading, that kind of thing.
So I remember when I like looked at it, I was happy with what I had, which was good. It didn't require a lot of working in terms of the plot and things like that, but obviously a lot of editing needed to go into what I already had. But yeah, I tried to write on the fly and just kind of write and see what happened. And I realized I'm not really good at that. I need to have everything mapped out. So it would have been a shorter process had I started mapping from the very start. But I was like, no, you know what? I can do this. I can't do this. And now every time, I need to write, I'm like, cool. So we need to map out every chapter, figure out what day of the week it is, figure out what date we are, so we know the clothes we're wearing, what season we're in, things like that. And I found that, by writing 10 dates, I've figured out that's the way I write best. Some people are totally different, and I really admire those people that can just write on the fly, but definitely not my style.
So you're a plotter.
Definitely a plotter.
I understand. I have pantsed most of my books. I'm trying to, with my new series, I'm trying to go back and plot.
Yeah.
Ooh, going against the grain is hard. So I understand your pain when you're like, I'm just going to pants this, and then you're like, whoa, girl, back this up.
Well, it's funny because I actually have one more book left in the Hollywood Socialite Series for now. It could definitely change, but I tried something different because I just finished my first draft of that one, and I tried something totally different. I was like, I'm just going to write what inspires me. I'm not going to try and force myself to write from chapter 1 to the end like I did with the other 2 books. And I found that actually works better for me when I can just write what I feel like writing that particular day and at that particular time. So it's interesting, the more I write, the more I find out about what my writing style is and how it's completely changed from when I first started.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Because writing craft, writing discipline, it all changes. I feel like we all get kind of write different scenes and then you weave them together. I call them,
Yeah.
some people call them starburst writing, where you like here, 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 and then you just tie it all together.
When I was writing 10 dates and 3,000 words, I thought that in order to keep my consistencies and to keep the plot going seamlessly through, that I had to write from the start to the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tried it out, and because I have 2 kids and I don't have a lot of like big chunks of spare time, it's all interspersed through the day and things like that. I was like, I'm just going to try and see if this works. And so I'd write like bits and pieces on my phone all through the day, grab my laptop when I had a chance, and I found that it got the first draft done a lot quicker than I usually would.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the first draft. It gives me so much anxiety trying to get through the first draft. So if we can get through that part faster, that's way better for me.
That is so interesting because I love the first draft. I hate rewrites. And so when I write my first draft, it all goes in there. People will be like, oh, I just put in there like research this later or add more description later or all this. I was like, oh, no. I have to write like word for word. And then when I send it off to my developmental editor, she's like, you got some holes and stuff. I'm like, duh.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, that's really interesting because yeah, I used to be like that, and then I figured I feel like indie authoring is a lot of it's the speed game, so trying to get out books that are good but in a timely manner, especially when you're writing a series, you want to be able to pump out books fairly quickly. And I just thought these first drafts are just really holding me back. I just need to just push through them because I love the editing stage. I love doing editing. It's that first draft that really kills me.
That's why I love talking to other authors and doing these interviews because one, I hope it inspires people who always want to write a book and they never do. I'm like, you can do it. Like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
second piece, though, is everyone's author journey is so varied, so different, and absolutely fascinating. Like what works for them, just like what works for you, you found in your third book. And I feel like that's what it takes, is it kind of takes to get a couple under your belt to figure out you.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I wrote 10 Dates, there's no way I would have let anyone read anything I wrote. And now I'm like, yeah, great, read it. Like, I'll talk to you about it and stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting how you evolve the more, I guess, practice you get.
I think that's true. So, on the second book, how long did it take you? How many words is that? And then what was your style then? Was it still that chronological order?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much chronological order. I started doing the first draft, I think, mid last year. And essentially, I had just published 10 Dates, and I was like, great. So, I'm trying to do all this marketing and stuff for 10 Dates because as a self published author, that never ends.
Never.
Um, Never. But yeah, it just ended up being that I set aside like one night a week where I was like, great, I'm gonna try and aim for like one chapter a week, see how it goes. And it flowed pretty seamlessly, writing it from the start to the end. Ended up being really close to the same word count as 10 Dates, which is about 99,000 words, and which was what I was aiming for. I think the final edit was just a smidge under.
Mhm.
But that's usually what I aim for, like around 100,000 words, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like with romance novels, you don't want them to be too long because there's not a lot of world building that you need for like your fantasies where, give me all the word counts. So, yeah, I try to aim for like 100,000 and then it ends up being around that 98, 99, which is, the sweet spot for my books.
Yeah. And so with 3,000 words coming out and you already have your draft, that's so exciting for the third book.
Yeah.
Will that close out the series? Or do you think if the readers say, hey, I want more, will they be more?
It's definitely going to close out Libby's character arc. So there's a lot of still unfinished questions from the first two books.
Ooh.
So I'm going to have that last book, which is essentially going to tie up Libby's character development, her character arc. It's going to have I've never tried to write a love triangle trope before, so I was really excited about giving that a go.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Do you
Yeah.
read Why Choose?
I haven't read a lot of them, so I'm trying to read more of them to kind of get into the mindset of, trying to develop that and do it well.
It's,
Because
it's tricky.
yeah, and I had like in 10 Decks and 3,000 Words, there's a lot of the same tropes going on. There's like the forbidden love, he falls first. So there's a lot of the similar tropes there. So with the third book, I was like, great, let's try and do completely different tropes, really try and challenge myself while tying up all the loose ends that I know are still hanging around there.
You're like, let me make this extra hard on me.
Why not? Why not?
I'm going to change my writing style. I'm going to change how I weave it all together. I'm going to add some extra tropes, keep the other tropes, and then tie up my whole series. You're like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, that's it. But I think there'll be just the three Libby novels. But I have got a lot of side characters that I'm thinking about doing some standalone books and things like that. So
Yes.
it'll be finished, but kind of not.
But readers love connected series, right? So like Libby may have, a friend or a sibling. I mean, there's just like your side characters can have their own series and then it just goes on and, people love it.
Yeah, it's super popular. Just being able to take characters you've already established, characters you've already introduced, and then just kind of going off on that tangent. So yeah, I think that's probably what I'll end up doing.
Well, especially if they love your characters, they just want more and more and more.
Yeah, exactly.
So, how long will it take you to do the rewrites? Do you set it aside? Some people say, like, hey, I do my first draft, I set it aside for whatever amount of time, and then I pick it back up again. Do you do that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh. Okay. How long does it marinate?
It really varies. I try and leave it at least a couple of weeks. But usually things get in the way. Like I finished the first draft of this third book, and then I really had to dedicate myself to the 3,000 words launch. So I was like, great. So let's put that aside and things like that. But I try to, every time I do an edit, leave at least a couple of weeks in between, just to kind of give me fresher eyes to look at what it looks like. And then, I try and leave it for a bit before I send it off to my beta readers, and then leave it a bit, things like that. But yeah, I just find that it's a little bit easier trying to force myself. But then otherwise I don't have time to actually read anything. So I try to set it aside when, the books that I'm highly anticipating come out as well.
I know, right? You're like, I got to get this around my reader schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I understand. When you come back to your manuscript, sometimes you're like, oh, what was I thinking? Or I got that wrong. Or like, did I not see that glaring inconsistency or that plot hole? Yeah, sometimes when you come back, it's just like a fresh mind and you're not in it. It's more like the critical editor side appears rather than the, like creative flowy writer.
Yeah. I actually, when I was editing 3,000 words, I usually edit from start to finish. And for the I think it was the second last or the last edit, I decided to just jump from random chapters. And I found that just to kind of, because usually by like the end chapters, you're kind of like, oh, I'm done with this edit. I don't really want to look at it. And so I feel like those later on chapters don't really get the attention that they need. So it was interesting to do it like that, try and mix it up a little bit.
When I first published, right when I was publishing my first book, I had an author group that I belonged to, and obviously I shouldn't have been in there. These ladies had published like 20 and 30 books, and then there was me, baby author, with one. And one of the ladies said, here's when you know that it's ready to publish, is when you absolutely hate it. You cannot read it one more time. And you're like, this is a pile of trash. She's like, and then you're ready. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would never think of my baby that way. Girl, best advice ever.
Yeah. I know that feeling well.
Well, because you do. Like, I am lucky that I have both a developmental editor. I have an alpha team that reads it. And I do have, I pay for a copy line editor. So I have a ton of eyes. But things still, like mostly it's always grammar, right? It's not inconsistencies. We've kind of all worked it out. But, I have one coming up that's releasing Tuesday. One of my alphas, she's like, I have 3 grammar errors. And I'm like, damn it. Because it has literally gone by now through, even my art team has it now. So it's gone through 10 eyeballs. And you're thinking like, how does this happen? And so I understand what you're saying. Like those later chapters, are weary eyes.
Definitely.
But, those typos or grammar error, you're like, how are we blind, all of us blind to it?
Well, when I read, when I see like a typo or grammatical error, it really annoys me. And so I never want anyone to pick up my book and be like, oh, look at these glaringly obvious typos. That would be that. It just, so I'd rather do too much editing rather than not enough.
Oh, I tell everybody, send it to me. I will fix it. I will re-upload it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like to me, okay, so I'll tell you a secret. I read one of Hillary Clinton's books.
Oh, yeah.
She had a typo. And I'm like, okay, if Hillary Clinton can have a typo,
yeah,
we can have typos.
I've read a couple of traditionally published works that have had typos, like the wrong tense or something like that. And I'm like, how do these little typos and stuff get through? If I can see them, surely other people can see them too.
So she had a typo. And what was interesting, this one was a true typo. Instead of being like here, it was her. And I was like, oh, And then during the printing process, like her line printed at the bottom and again at the top. So I was
Oh,
like,
hmm.
okay. And I kept that book and I have it literally dog-eared under two typos. That's messed up.
It means it can happen to anyone, whether you're doing it yourself or you've got a publishing house doing it for you. It can happen to anyone, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's true because a lot of eyes go through, it sees a lot of eyes. But I know what you're saying. I think it's fascinating, though, that you even kind of do that starburst technique with the editing because I would imagine sometimes when we edit our stories, you end up reading them along and you're like, no, 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 we're supposed to be like editing. And I would imagine when you do that starburst where you jump around your work, it eliminates reading the story.
Yeah, exactly. And you know how the story goes, so sometimes your eyes just kind of skim over rather than reading
They do.
actually on the page. Mm.
They do, trust me. Okay, so on your third book, do you have a title? And you don't have to share it. I was just wondering.
So I've got a tentative title. I'm not 100% sold on it, and that may just be me being super harsh on it because the titles for 10 Dates and 3,000 Words kind of came really easily and it fit with what the story and the plot was about. This one, I've kind of got a tentative title, but I'm not 100% sold on it. So I need like my alphas and my betas to kind of read through it and tell me what they think because I think I need a different perspective on it because the more I can't come up with anything better, but I feel like there might be something better out there. I just don't know what it is yet.
Will it have numbers?
It has to. I feel like it has to kind of tie them all in together. So
Yeah, be consistent.
that's right, exactly.
Do you rely on your betas and your readers to not help you craft, but do they give you ideas? Do they give you suggestions on your story line? You know, not like grammatical and all that, but do they say like, hey, I was thinking about your characters and this person would do this or this scene? Do they give any kind of feedback like that?
So the betas that I do have are super passionate about the characters and the storyline, which I feel like makes all the difference because they're really
Oh,
invested in
yeah,
the
it's
story.
awesome.
And it is. It's so nice to talk to people that are that invested about something that you've created. So they do give me suggestions. The main thing that I usually ask my beaters to do is help me pick out the errors in culture. So I'm from Australia. So I've never been to, so for example, in 3,000 Words, the setting is Columbia University, so college setting.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I asked my beta readers was like, I want you to read this and tell me, does it sound like we are actually in a US university setting? Because your universities are so different to ours. And I didn't want anyone to pick it up and be like, well, this girl obviously has no idea what she's talking about. This is wrong, wrong. So that was one of the main things where I'm like, great. So can you tell me, like, does this sound genuine? And also then picking up the little like the spelling differences that we have. Like, for example, enrollment. I had it in 3,000 Words with one L, but apparently you guys in the US use two L's. So it's, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, yes. So that's what my beta readers, that was the focus for 3,000 Words. So, but yeah, they give me the suggestions and stuff, which is really nice. And yeah, I think I've reached the point in my author career where I'm happy to take on suggestions and advice. Back in 10 Dates, I was like, no, this is mine. This is what I want to do. But yeah, I think I'm definitely open to it now. Yeah, don't touch my story. This is mine. I've created it. So yeah.
Well, you know that you raise a good point. And yes, Sienna, she's a fellow Aussie. She's my girl on the other side of the world. But you raised a good point because when we're starting out, we're so protective of our work. And what we don't realize, and I think it does take you, you know, getting into your author career to realize that there are people that will be in the boat rowing with you. They're more than happy to row that boat with you. And when you have loyal folks, loyal readers, and then they're invested and they want to share their ideas, and it's to me such a compliment. It's such an expression of their appreciation for your work. But you know,
Yeah.
you can't explain that to a debut author because they're like, what? You want me to listen to random people I meet on social media?
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Yes, yes, I do. But I think, as long as it's coming from a place of like love and compassion and they like your work, obviously, criticism is hard to take. But if you know where it's coming from, I mean, obviously, we don't take feedback from just anybody and everybody. But yeah, it's so nice when you have a team that is in your story with you, loves the characters, uh, talks about the characters as though they're real people. You're like, oh, they
Yeah,
did it.
yeah, it is. It's such a good feeling.
It's a wonder. I think sometimes we may not always get 5 stars, but we do get those compliments. And those to me are like the biggest gold stars, the most number of gold stars, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
But I understand what you're talking about when it says setting or plot or,
Mm.
trying to get things right. I was talking to an author and I happened to say something we got to talking about natural lighting. And she's like, no, 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 no. The morning light in Spain is so different than the morning light in Italy.
Okay.
I thought, well, isn't it the same sun rising?
Yeah, that's what I would have said.
I know. I was like, and so she explained it to me, and it was just really fascinating. And she said, if you haven't been to those countries, something as subtle as that, you would not know. And I thought,
Mm.
oh, that is interesting. So part of like our research as authors, right? And so you rely upon your betas, like, is this what we do in America? I love that.
Yeah, and a lot of phrases and things like that that I would usually say. I sometimes have to check in with my betters and be like, is this something you guys would say, or what is the equivalent? Because I've read a couple of books where it's an American author and they've tried to write an Australian character, and I've had to put it down because I'm like, no, no, we don't talk like that in Australia. So wrong. So I never want to find myself in that situation as an author.
I know. I think that would be challenging. I have a book that I'm writing now, and I'm writing outside of my comfort zone. And so
Mm.
I've already talked to 2 people. I said, will you be my sensitivity readers? Will you help me because I'm not quite sure. Um, but I've also reached out to people and be like, look, I obviously am, Caucasian with my Caucasian hair, and I want to write outside of that. So I will reach out to people that I know and be like, hey, how do you handle curly hair? How do you handle,
Mm.
darker skin? What are some of the things that I need to know? The products, how, what do y'all encounter? Like you wouldn't say someone necessarily burns or their sunburn or, just little things like that. And I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, I like that phrase, like sensitivity. You're
Mhm.
sensitive to people that you check in with things like that. That's yeah, that's really cool. I like that idea.
Well, because you want to get it right. And we don't, my fear is I don't ever want to be disrespectful.
Of course, yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it can hurt you.
Yeah, and it's very hard to offend someone in some capacity without meaning to, without even realizing that you're actually doing it. So yeah, I understand that.
Mm-hmm. Um, so, what kind of research have you had to do for your books? Because I know some people are like, oh, I don't do any at all, but I'm sure you've had to do some since you are writing literally outside your country.
Yeah, so the big thing is the cultural stuff. So the places, the people, how we talk, and things like that. But because it was inspired a lot by early Gossip Girl, there's an element of high fashion in a lot of these characters' lives, which you would assume when you're dealing with your famous people, your
Oh,
social your actresses,
of course.
etc. Would expect that they'd be into these big brands and things like that. Something that I am not very well versed in. So that's probably the thing I do my most research on, just making sure that it's accurate, but at the same time, it's realistic based on the characters that we're dealing with.
Uh, there's someone sending us a bunch of hearts, which is sweet.
Oh,
But I know exactly what you're talking about, and I feel like it kind of is almost like a credibility thing
Mm.
because I was reading a billionaire romance this week, and I normally don't read billionaire just because I don't write that. So I try to read in my subgenre, and I don't write billionaire. I don't have any of that, nor do I plan to. However, I was reading one, and you know, if you're a billionaire, you literally can afford, you know, there's no limit, right? But
Yeah.
one of the brands was just like, not necessarily like you'd expect like a Rolex watch, and maybe it was like a Swatch watch or something. You know what I mean? I thought, oh, this is not it.
Yeah. I
So,
think it's also being like when I was writing it, being aware of the versatility in different brands as well. Like we're not just mentioning the same brand and doing that to death. That's clearly the only brand that we're familiar with. So
oh, I know. So if you saw, you know how Sex and the City was very popular here in the US? I mean, do y'all have that over there?
yeah, very
Okay,
popular.
so she has all those brands.
Definitely.
And so some of those, when you hear her, you're like, what? Okay, sorry, my thing is, it seemed like it, you know, like froze up. I read one billionaire who was wearing Calvin Klein, and I was like, what? I get that at Target. That's
Love that.
exactly, that's exactly it, right? You're like, I don't think they wear Calvin Klein, but you know, you'd have to Google like high-end and male underwear.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be a terrible problem, you know, having to Google like hot, high-end dudes. So let me ask you this. What is the most challenging part of your author journey, and what has been the easiest?
I think the most challenging part is for me, it's still that first draft. I don't think anything for me is harder than getting that first draft done. It feels like once it is done, I've reached the top of the mountain and everything is downhill from there.
Yeah.
Like even and you know the marketing and the editing are both never ending. I feel like they still aren't as hard as that first draft. At least that's for me. It's getting that whole draft done. In terms of the easiest, I don't even know what the easiest thing is. It might be that
You're like none
designing.
of it.
I think designing my book covers, I really, really like that creative aspect of being able to self-publish and being able to have creative control about what your final book looks like. Obviously, like I said, I'm really, really bad when it comes to illustration, so I let the pros deal with that. But yeah, putting the cover together is always really fun for me. So that's probably the easiest part.
Well, I know covers to me are so fun, and there's such creativity, right? You can go a million different directions. There's so many decisions you have to make. You know, do I do a series logo? What are going to be my colors for this? You know, obviously they have to somewhat be cohesive and match. So I think covers are really fun.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the hardest, I know that the first draft, I mean, it does. You had said, Bada, you're at the top of the mountain. And I always think that when I finish a book, I'm like, oh, top of the mountain. And then when you go to the start of the next one, you're like, bottom of the mountain.
Yeah, it's that feeling, isn't it? The highs and the lows, definitely.
It is. And so when you explain it to people, they're like, what are you talking about? Mountains? And you're like, oh, never mind.
I don't think you realize just what goes into writing a book from start to finish until you actually do one yourself.
Oh, it is so true. You know, when I explain to people like, oh, my characters just kind of like walked off, you know, walked across the pages. Like, I didn't know they were going to do this. And people are like, aren't you writing it? Like, what are you talking about? But when you talk to other authors, they're like, exactly. I had
Yeah.
no idea that these two are going to fall in bed with each other. They're not supposed to. And you're like, oh,
But that's what's so good about like the Bookstagram community, where you can talk to other people and they get you. They understand all these things that you're going through, the highs, the lows, the feelings, the problems. It's really nice to be able to connect with other authors on social media for that.
oh, it is. I think the Bookstagram community is wonderful because if you have anybody, you know, if you need help, if you don't have a vendor, if you need resources, if you get stuck, if you have a question about, you know, like, I don't know, any of the vendors that or book services, there's always someone that's a little bit further ahead than you that's willing to answer it, in my experience. And I always
No,
tell people, I'm like, my DMs are open. Like, just go ahead and DM me. You know, we all rise with the tide is what I always say. And it's so true because some point, all of us are a new author. And at some point, all of us will be a mid-level author and an experienced author.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same. And it's nice to be able to reach out and have other people reach out to you and to be able to share any knowledge that you've picked up along the journey and to pass that on to the next author.
Yeah, well, that's the idea behind these Let's Go Live series, because, you know, I'll post them here on Instagram. You'll be tagged as a collaborator, but I also post them on YouTube. And then that way they become like a learning library or resource for anyone else, you know. And so there's plenty enough people that commute in a car, commute in a train, there's drive time, there's car lines, there's practices. I mean, there's a lot of downtime that we have where we're just waiting. And so people can just tune in and listen and be like, okay, well, how did this author do it? And eventually, you know, when authors continue to grow with their brand and their name, you know, those interviews stay out there and people can just literally follow the blueprint that you implemented.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So where do your ideas come from? I know this one came from Gossip Girl, but that can only get you so far. That, you know what I mean? And then it's your own ideas kicking in.
Sometimes I don't even know where my ideas come from. Sometimes I'll sit down and I'll work on, you know, a whole bunch of brainstorming, and that's how an idea will come to me. Once I finish this third book and get this published and stuff, I'm trying to, again, expand myself as an author. I really want to have a go at writing a romantic comedy. And I was like, great, this is what I want to do, and things like that. And I sat on the idea for a couple of weeks, and every time I sat down to brainstorm, I felt like I was really forcing it. And I kept leaving it, and I was like, no, this is like, it's no good, this idea is not great at all. And I always come up with my best ideas when I'm in the shower. It's probably because I don't have like my children or my husband just talking at me, and I actually have some peace and quiet. But it was just randomly one day in the shower, and it clicked, and I was like, great, that's the idea that I'm going to run with. So yeah, sometimes the ideas are hours of brainstorming, and sometimes they just kind of come to you, and those are the really good ones where you don't have to force them, you don't have to work for them, they just kind of happen. But it doesn't always happen like that.
I feel like those are like divine downloads. Like, I'm a person of faith, and so I always, like, when I get stuck or I need help, or I don't know, just anytime I'm in need, it seems like the answer always comes. And in the weirdest ways. You know, I could be talking and sharing talking to someone in the Bookstagram community, whether it be like a beta or a reader or an author, and kind of explain what I'm like, you know, I'm kind of stuck. And then they're like, oh, you know, you should do blah, blah, blah. Or I know this person. I feel like it's always one step away. And that's what I love. It's like magic.
Yeah, and it's a really good feeling when those ideas do come to you, and you're just like, wow, I have no idea where that came from, but I love this idea, and it's just, I'm gonna go with this. This is amazing.
Okay, so not to give spoilers, but are you saying this new shower idea could be a series, like a new different series?
I think I'm going to go with I think it's going to be a standalone. It's definitely taken one of the side characters, well, a couple of side characters from the Hollywood Socialite Series and run with them characters that I was just like, great, these would be such fun characters to write a separate story, because I feel like they haven't had enough screen time in the book, so let's take them. But I've always wanted to also write like a holiday novel, so like a Christmas novel, so I'm trying to tie like ideas into it, and my Instagram is blowing up with holiday novels, and I love reading holiday romances, so I'm like, you know what, I want to have a go at writing one of these. So I think that's where we're headed at the moment, but it could change, who knows.
Oh my gosh, you should write a holiday romance. I have, you know, that one coming out on Tuesday, and I have to tell you, it's been so much fun. Because I feel like the holidays just automatically have so many events that you can send your characters through.
Yeah, and it's I love Christmas. I love the holidays. So it would be really fun as well, because we are in the middle of summer here, and I would love to write a holiday romance
snow
where we're in winter, where we've got the snow and things like that, just so I can live vicariously through you guys, because it's really hot over here, and I would love it to be snowing and be cold.
I know, I was thinking about that the other day, because I was like, y'all don't have snow angels at Christmas.
No, we don't. It's really sad, and no fires, no hot cocoa. It's just really, really hot.
Yeah, no cozy vibes. I know. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, it's very different. So I think it would be fun to kind of play around because I love reading the holiday romances where we've got snowstorms and we're cuddling around the fire and things like that. Love those vibes. So I'd love to try writing.
Okay, so I heard forest proximity, maybe share one bed, snowstorms, snow angels. I think you got it covered.
Yeah, I think so. They sound like all my favorite tropes. So
I think we just brainstormed your book.
woohoo!
Okay, so when will your third book come out? And then when can you start writing this spin-off standalone?
So, like I said, the first draft. So I'm currently doing some edits before I send it off to my beta readers. I'm chatting with my illustrator this week because that will, I guess, kind of be the determining point because my illustrator is college, so she's obviously very busy with the rest of her life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for a summer release next year though. So I'm hoping to get it out pretty quickly. But I actually am on maternity leave at the moment. So in Australia, we have amazing maternity leave. So I've got 13 months off with my son. Yeah, which is crazy when I talk to you guys from the US because it's so very, very different. But that was how I got 10 dates written. I was on maternity leave for 13 months with my daughter, and I did most of 3,000 words while I was on maternity leave with my son. So I go back next year in April. I'm hoping to get the first draft of this next standalone done before then, because then I can edit while I'm back at work and things like that. But I need to get my first draft done because we all know how I feel about first drafts.
Well, also, when you're working a full-time job, I mean, not that you're not working a full-time job with those two babies, because hallelujah, you are.
Yeah,
Those two babies, plus your husband probably wants to see you and spend time with you, that guy. And then go back to work, and then you're author. So yeah, your plate will be super, super full.
Yeah. So that's my aim. I'm hoping to get this first draft of this standalone done before April. So fingers crossed. That's the goal.
Will it be the same 100,000 words, roughly?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of torn between doing a like a full-length novel versus a novella. But I have read a lot of novellas. It just sounds appealing because every time I go to kind of like do a little bit of mapping and things like that, the story kind of doesn't feel like it would be 100,000 words long, and I don't want to force it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the holiday books, if you wanted to do a holiday book for it, they're not 100,000,
They seem to do that
40, 65.
I've never written one that's like around that, so I'm not sure. I don't even know how I would go about doing it. I just have to, yeah. Who knows? We'll have to just see what happens.
Well, I'll give you, if you don't mind, a piece of advice, because like I told you, I had always pantsed, and then I did this new Cougars and Cubs series, and I decided to plot it. And so my first one was 40, I'm trying to think, it came in at 45,000 words, so a novella. The next one series is about 67,000, and then I'll keep within that 60-something range, right? But I created my own beat sheet, and that helped me. So I have a little beat sheet that's like for 44,000 words. And obviously you can't get all the beat sheet. You can't get all the beats that you did on your 100,000, right? Because my other series is like 125, 130,000 for romance, which, girl, we don't even need to go there. But it helped to have like a little mini beat sheet to keep me organized on my stories. And so maybe that would help you, is if you create your own beat sheet of like, okay, well, like, how do I do one if you want to do 40? How do I do one for 65? And then, the sweet spot in there, something like that.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I think there's definitely much more planning to do, which can be frustrating though when you just kind of want to get to writing, but I feel like it helps in the long run when you've got that framework to work off.
Oh, I struggle. I was like, I want to be the smartest girl in the room. I want to follow my beat sheet. Oh no, that's been for this pantser that's been very challenging to stick to my beat sheet. And then I go back to it and I'm like, okay, what's supposed to be happening? And so I created the beats that I wanted to hit. Then I kind of plugged in like the chapters and which character is going to be that chapter. So I was like, I'm going to be so smart and this is going to go like so fast. Oh my gosh, trying to write it. I'm like, what am I? But like, like she's supposed to have met him, but I'm like, but she already did meet him. And then, so, like it did not coincide. And so I've been having, yeah, that's what my problem has been. I'm like, I want to go back to pantsing, but I'm trying not to.
I don't know how you can do pantsing. It just, every time I think about doing it, and I was like, I feel like it'd take me twice as long, but.
Well, it may give you hives.
Maybe.
But I don't know if that would help you out in your planning, so if you settle on whatever you want your word count to be, then you can come up with your own beat sheet and then maybe it'll make it easier for you. It's
definitely a good idea. I'm definitely going to try it. I'm willing to try anything at this point so that, 5-10 years down the track when I'm hopefully still writing, I'll know exactly what type of writer I am, because I feel like every time I write a book, it changes a little bit slightly. So who knows? Maybe I'll figure out 100% what type of writer I am.
I hear you. I had 4 books published, and then I was like, let me totally scrap the way I do everything and start completely over. That sounds brilliant.
Why not?
But I do envy. I was listening. I find writing craft and other authors completely fascinating. So I kind of study other authors like a lot, maybe obsessively. But anyway. And so anyway, I was Danielle Steele. Obviously, she's like the grandmother of romance. She's published, I don't know, hundreds of books, whatever. But I read her writing discipline, and she does a 70-page outline before she writes.
Wow.
I was like, girl, you've basically written the whole book.
Wow, 70 pages.
That's if you look up and listen to some of her, interviews. I mean, she doesn't have many out there because she doesn't have to do interviews because she's Danielle Steele. But I was so surprised. And then, there was another author, I think it's Megan March, and she has, kind of like a blueprint too. And so she says, I just follow, my beat sheet, I just follow it all the way down. And so I feel like you're right. They get so, there's such a formula for these that they just can churn them out over and over and over and over because they have everything figured out right by now. So
yeah. That might be us. That might be us in 2 years. No. With our 7 outlines.
I know, that would be wonderful. So we are coming up on the hour, and I have a few rapid fire questions. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, so paperback or e-reader?
I was always paperback, but I'm an e-reader now.
I know. I love paperback, but I don't want all the books here. I like the e-reader.
Yeah, it helps you get through books way faster.
Well, like you, when you have children and you're going on the road with them, or if you're, in a car line, or if you're at the doctor's office, anywhere you have to wait, they're so convenient.
Definitely, 100%.
Plotting or pantsing?
It's got to be plotting.
Do you write in first person or third person?
I write in third person, but I think I'm going to try first person with my rom-com upcoming.
Oh, so present tense or past?
I'm not sure. I thought I was writing in past tense, and then when I got halfway through, I was like, nope, we're in present tense. Are we in both tenses? I think so. We need to sort that out.
All the tenses. I want all the tenses. I know it's so easy to slip in and out of those.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, it just happened, and I was like, wow, no, that's wrong. We're in all kinds of problems.
I love it. You're like, what happened?
Yeah.
I relate to that so hard because I sent something over to my copy line editor, and they were like 2 flashback scenes. I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to write these in past tense. I think I wrote them in present.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't even know. So could you just fix them and just let me know?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know. Okay, plot driven or are you character driven?
For 10 dates, I was very much character driven, but normally I'm plot driven.
Oh, interesting that you're both. So on the third book, what are you?
Very much plot driven for this one. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Didn't know about the end. It kind of happened, but I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And it was, yeah, very much plot.
And then tying it all together, I would imagine, adds
Yeah,
to the plot driven side. Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
Cool. Okay, writing alone, writing with a partner, or writing sprints?
Writing alone. Writing alone for sure.
Because your time is so limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to maximize it when those babies are asleep.
Yeah, exactly. And even, when I'm feeding my son, I'm writing on my phone. So I've started that. That helps me get the words out as well.
So there was that, she started off on Wattpad, but Anna Todd, do you
Mm-hmm.
know her? Okay, so she wrote the After series. It's been,
Yes.
it's just been like a phenomenal success. It's in Netflix now. But she wrote it all on her phone in the Notes app. She said,
Wow.
waiting in line at the grocery store. I had, if I was doing like toddler pickup, she wrote the entire thing on her phone. So when you said that, it
That,
reminded me of her.
that's, as a mum, that is so relatable.
See, you're in the company of greatness.
Yes,
You're like, me and her are the same. You write it on our phone.
absolutely.
Are you an outliner or a discovery writer?
I'm an outliner for sure.
Yeah. Do you write in silence or write with music?
Silence. I don't know how people write with music. I just get so distracted. I just end up singing with the music and I forget where I am and what I'm doing.
Well, granted, you probably can't listen to Taylor Swift because hers are pretty catchy, but
Yes.
like an instrumental. I know sometimes I am a mood writer, right? I need to just have like an instrumental piece on or something to just kind of get deeper into the feelings.
Yeah, I've never tried instrumental piece. That might be something else I try.
Well, I think like, okay, so I'll be honest with you, when I write my smegsy scenes, it always has to be, I mean, it always is something like really sensual because, you want to make them like as good as possible.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, and then I have like when they want to be sad, which I really don't write too many sad scenes, but when there's a couple like sad or like deeply emotional, I'll put on, this sounds so crazy, but I'll put on like heavy classical. You know
Oh,
how
yeah.
it sounds so like sad and depressing? And I'm like, this is the right music. This is it. This is it.
Yeah, to get you in the zone for writing it. Yeah, that makes sense.
I understand. If I had Taylor Swift on, I'd be singing all her stuff. So,
Yeah, I do the same.
okay, writing with a deadline or at your own pace.
I feel like writing with a deadline. I like to work under a little bit of pressure.
Well, and I think too, because of your life and trying to get everything done, it's like,
Mm.
forced upon you deadlines.
Yes, definitely. Trying to get it in before life gets even crazier.
Because life is life.
Mm.
Series or standalone?
I'm usually a standalone reader, but I've really enjoyed writing this series. So I don't know what the future will hold. Maybe I'll write more series, maybe more standalones. Who knows?
Well, and I think too, when you write like that first book and it's so well received and people want more of this story, and sometimes you're like, I didn't get everything into that story that I wanted to, right, achieve. And so I think that's a lot of times how series are born because readers aren't ready to say goodbye and we're
Yeah,
not done writing their story. We're like, oh, we got more.
yeah, exactly.
That's the beautiful part of being an indie writer because you're like, I can do whatever.
That's right. Yeah, you've got all the creative freedom you need.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are these historical setting, present day, or future?
I think present day. Not much of a historical writer or reader, but yeah, so probably present day.
I think the present is honestly the easiest.
Mm.
Historical is tricky because, not only is it like The settings, it's the language, it's the technology, you know, like you have to just have, you know, and to me, you have to really read a lot of historical to get it right, you know, if you're going
Yeah,
to write it.
definitely.
And
I
then
read
this,
contemporary stuff, so it makes sense to write in that present day for me.
yeah. And I think the same thing with the future is even harder because it has to be almost like a little sci-fi-ish.
Mm.
You got to know, like, what are the gadgets? You're not walking around with their like Apple whatever number phone. You then probably have some other like cool stuff we haven't even thought about yet.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun, a super fast hour. And so I'd love to have you on again next year
Yeah.
when you, yep, so we can catch up. We can talk about the third book. We can talk about the draft of that, you know, spinoff standalone.
Yep, lots to come still.
I know 2024 is the year to thrive.
Yes.
Well, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. And so I wish you a happy holidays there, a Merry Christmas. You can catch up on all of our snowy holiday books here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been super fun.
Yes, and I will catch you in the DMs. Thanks so much, Bridget.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye.